This is the PRESS+1 podcast. I'm Kindah Mardam, and I'm here today with Aaron Bala. Say hello, Aaron.
Hello, Aaron.
Ha and we're talking about the first full season of Game of Thrones, which is 10 episodes. It's an HBO show, and if you haven't seen it, where are you? This is an incredibly creative and exciting show, and I don't know, it's medieval fantasy, which has normally been relegated to novels, and now we're starting to see the first, I think, actualization of it in kind of a bit of a brutal way on HBO. You agree with that, hey, Aaron?
I do. I think maybe even more than anything, we're seeing it as a TV show that it hasn't. I guess there have been on and off TV shows of that nature, the kind of fantasy, but I don't know if there have been a lot of books to TV show conversions. You see a lot of fantasy medieval books to movie conversions. Lord of the Rings might be the biggest example of that, but this might be one of the first, and like you said, more brutal, more of the R rating.
And this definitely has, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start by setting up the show. So we're going to talk a little bit about the show and how it's arranged and the houses and that sort of thing. So anybody who is new to seeing Game of Thrones or wants to get caught up before season 2 starts on April 1st, we're going to give a bit of an outline of that. Then somewhere along the show, we will be pointing out that we will start to talk about spoilers, some of the coolest aspects of the show that we liked in the past season, plot points that we just can't talk about without doing some spoilers. But I'll give you a really clear alert to make sure that you are, if that's the time you want to tune out, then feel free to tune out then.
And while you're tuning out, may I recommend you just go watch the entire 10 episodes, and then come back to us.
Try and catch up before Sunday night as best you can.
Exactly.
So, okay, I'm going to hand this over to you, Aaron. First of all, I wanted to ask you, have you read the books?
I have not read the books. I have friends who have read the books and have been tossing hints my way, but I have not read the books.
This is a good place for us to be in because I have also not read the books, and I think we bring to watching the show a uninformed opinion, which I think is wonderful in certain ways, because we don't know where the characters are leading, and I've reviewed the season 1 DVD, the Blu-ray version, and there've been a couple of comments that have been made saying that the show is not super strict to how the books turn out. So that means that what you're seeing on season 1 or season 2 may not necessarily be how these characters evolve in the books. So just because you've read the books, it's not a given. So with that said, neither of us have read the books. Tell me, where would we get started in talking about Game of Thrones?
I think certainly mentioning it's a medieval fantasy epic is a good place to start. You've got about 4 different families, I would say, that are vying for power. There's what's called the Iron Throne, which is really, he rules the entire Seven Kingdoms, and whoever has the Iron Throne is really in charge of it all. That's why it's called Game of Thrones, because everyone wants this throne. So you've got the 4 different families, the 4 different houses as they are. Right now the throne is being ruled by House Stark.
Baratheon.
Well, he's leading it, but I believe it's the House of Stark, if I'm correct, or else someone at home is like going, no, it's not. It's something else. But yes, Robert Baratheon is the king, and he is in power because a few years earlier he ripped power away from the old guy. That would be Aerys Targaryen.
That's right.
And now that would be House Daenerys. Oh man, I'm messing up all these house names, aren't I?
No, you're doing good. Targaryen was essentially banished. The family and all that remained really is this brother and sister Targaryen. And they were banished to a place across the waters. What do you call it?
Essos, yeah.
So they've been banished, and you're right. The House of Baratheon is being run by Robert Baratheon, and the House of Stark, which is the Northerners.
Yes, the House of Stark are probably our heroes, I would say. The closest we'll get to heroes.
I think so, yeah. Ed or Ned. They call him Ned, don't they? Eddard.
Eddard.
He was he is friends with Robert, and he helped him claim power of the throne and rule the Seven Kingdoms. But I feel like he really allowed that to happen, and then he just went up back to Winterfell where his family is and where he was established. So he really set it up for Robert.
Yeah, I think he prefers to be up in Winterfell. He prefers kind of the quieter life, and really the first episode starts with Robert Baratheon's sort of next in line, his right-hand man dying, and him needing a new right-hand man, and coming to Eddard Stark saying, I need your help, will you be my right-hand man? And Eddard doesn't want to do it, but he's duty-bound to the king.
This is really kind of where the first rift happens, because all of a sudden the House of Stark has to change the power shift of who runs it now, and it's, you know, his wife Catelyn becomes quite a more dominant member of that, but then again she has to hand that over to her sons as well, because she kind of goes off on her own journey. Now the house that we haven't spoken about is the House of Lannister.
There's three main characters from the House of Lannister. We have Cersei Lannister, and she is married to King Robert Baratheon, and they have a child together, Joffrey, who is in line to be the next king one day. Cersei has a twin brother, Sir Jaime Lannister, who is probably the head knight in Robert's little council there. And then finally we have possibly everyone's favorite character, Tyrion Lannister, played by the Emmy Award-winning Peter Dinklage, who I don't quite know the best way to say this, but, you know,
he's a playboy.
He's a little person.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm like, he's a playboy. You're like, he's a little person. Well, he's that too, but I thought you were dodging around the fact that he was the useless member of the family.
But he's also the best, I think. He has some of the best lines. He is someone you just can't say no to.
See, and really what I see in the House of Lannister is they really have that kind of conniving, clever, overly clever sometimes, but they're always, their goals are very, very, well, plainly put, evil, very self-absorbed and selfish. Whereas Tyrion is, he's actually of the House of Lannister. I think he stands out more because he has a heart. He has, and he's very selfish and very spoiled, but there's real elements about him where he uses his intellect that you think, oh yeah, no, that's cool, that's cheeky, as opposed to, oh my God, you want everybody dead around you, which is much like his twin siblings have on their agenda.
Yes.
We have all of these different houses, and essentially what they're trying to do is all usurp the power, all one up each other. And what you have is Jon Arryn, which is, oh God, this is where it gets confusing. Catelyn's
brother-in-law was Jon Arryn, who dies, I think, pretty much moments into the first episode.
Right, and really he is the right-hand man to the king, Robert, and he is no longer... Robert is kind of without friends, and that's why he brings Ned down to King's Landing.
Are you confused yet, viewers? I swear, it's a lot. It's as confusing and less confusing when you watch it. We swear.
Yeah, actually, we both watched this twice straight through, haven't we?
Yes. Oh, yes. That was my weekend, just marathoning this and loving every minute of it.
Now, did you feel you got a better grasp of the stories the second time around?
I think so. I think because this is such a sprawling epic tale, there are so many characters, it's easy to get lost in who each character is, how they're related to each other. My understanding is actually in the books there's an appendix so that you can quickly look people up and be like, oh, you're related to that person and that person. Luckily, on the internet, there's tons of character guides, tons of character trees for us to be able to keep track of it. And so I think knowing each of the characters, it helps to understand their motivations, why they want things. Littlefinger, for instance, has a love interest that you're better able to understand after you know all the different characters and who he's talking about sometimes when he's talking in veiled terms.
What would you consider your overall perception of the show. We've got a first 10 episodes. If you had to kind of sum it up as not so much the storyline, but how you felt about the show and what you liked about it overall.
I think it's important to realize just how large the scope is of this show. And this is just looking at the show, not even counting the books, which are 1,000 pages each and go into so much more depth. But every character feels so fleshed out, so written. You immediately can identify with these characters. They're all so very unique, and they all have their own personal goals. And so much of that revolves around power. There's a reason it's called Game of Thrones. Everyone wants the throne for their own different reasons. And some of the characters are more attuned to their family. They want to keep their family safe. They're vying for their family. Some of them want money. Some of them want to just have a good time. And yes, you have the swords and the fighting all wrapped up in there, but what really keeps you going are these characters, is just this overarching story and how it changes every week. Nothing is set in stone in this world. And I think that helps in a serial format, and it helps you as the viewer to just feel on the edge of your toes about what's coming next. You really don't know.
Definitely. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, it is, to a certain extent, the whole core of the story is about lineage and power and who has the right to the throne, which, by the way, coolest throne in existence. I mean...
It's made up of swords. That's cool.
That is so cool. They just had a big event at the Tiff Bell Lightbox where they had the throne, and you could go and sit on the throne and have your picture taken, and I think I was so close to getting that done. I just didn't know if crossing that line meant crossing a bigger line than normal.
Well, see, I was noticing apparently some of the pedicabs in certain cities, they had them done up to look like the Iron Throne. So that some of those guys would travel you around in an Iron Throne, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, just seeing kind of the political power and I can't imagine reading this in a book and trying to keep track of each one of these characters. I mean, you have this whole plot line with a character called Jon Snow, who
another breakout character.
Yeah, who is Ed's bastard son, and you know, I mean, talk about these, and he decides to commit his life to being one of the rangers at the wall. You know, which is also an entire other plot line in itself, beyond the wall, which is kind of like, if you look at this story and you look at the map, you're actually talking about England.
Yes, definitely.
You have the Northerners, which, you know, I have a particular affinity for because I am a Northerner from England. And there's the Welsh, which is like the Arryn family, I would say, and you know, you have all of these, you know, and then so my point is, you have this massive wall keeping out the wildlings and keeping out the what do they call them, the White Walkers?
Yes, the White Walkers, which are, I guess you would say, monsters in some sense, perhaps. There's something supernatural and mystical about them, and everyone's afraid of them, and that's why this entire wall was erected to prevent them from coming into the rest of us.
The sad part is that's Scotland. So I feel like there's a little bit of there's a little bit of a harsh take on the Scots being zombie, killer type.
Oh, yes.
I have no idea how the writers decided they would put this together. Not only is it not 22 or 24 episodes, which you get from a normal season on any other channel, but you also have so many characters, and you have this length and breadth of locations and how all of these characters intermingle. And if they don't intermingle properly, like you could lose very easily the plot line. I mean, there's something that happens at the end of the first episode with Bran Stark, the son. And I did not twig on that the first time I watched it, what he was seeing. And and then I had to go back and think, oh, I missed a line. Oh, that explains that. I missed a line. Like, So it's that type of thing where you hate to blink when you're watching the Game of Thrones, just because, goodness knows what you're going to be missing, really.
And I think that's what can help elevate a show like this into such the cultural pop icon it's become. There are so many TV shows out there that you watch once and that's it. That you can see it once and you're like, okay, I saw it, that's good. But a show like this, it's not only that you watch it once and you have to shut out all other distractions. You have to focus on watching this and this alone, but you want to watch it again after you see more episodes so you can go back and see sometimes just the seeds that were planted, as it were, for what was about to come.
Right. Now, what were some of your favorite characters from the show?
My favorite character, I think, was Arya Stark. I think she was really maybe ahead of her time a little bit. She's a very headstrong young girl. She's about, I would say, maybe 10, 11 maybe, but she doesn't want to do all the typical girly things that her older sister Sansa's doing. She wants to be her own woman, and well, her own young girl, I guess, at the time. But I felt very compelled to her story, that even though she was being different, she was being unique, she was being helped certainly by her father, Eddard. And I think certainly going into the next season, I'm very eager to see how her story plays out, where she is at by the end of the season. And Tyrion, I love Tyrion. I would say the first two episodes I kept watching because of Tyrion Lannister. He has all the greatest lines. They give him the funniest things to say.
And just his kind of, I don't know, he has this, I mean, I am such a stickler for people who put on a fake British accent. And, I have to admit, I was very grateful that this cast is dominated by Brits or Scots or Irish or people who had an understanding of the languages, like just even that the Northerners speak more Northern. I mean, like Rob Stark, I think he's the actual actor is Scots or something. So but he understands the Northern accent. So coming up against like Peter Dinklage is going to be playing British, and how do I feel about that? And I thought because really he comes from wealth and money, so his accent should, if we're mapping it out like England, it should be very enunciated and very kind of almost just a tiny hint of smug, and I just felt he really pulled it off. I mean, really, really pulled it off incredibly well.
Oh yeah.
Just that kind of air of, well, my father will deal with this, or I'm a Lannister, we always pay our debts. Like, it's just, his kind of his whole air about him, and you don't even really notice that he is an outsider until they point it out to you. It's like, and really I see a similar correlation between Tyrion and Jon Snow, because like they had that one conversation. It's like, Tyrion is considered an outsider because he's the imp of the family. He's not perfect, compared to Jaime Lannister, who's like this stunning Greek god of of the family. And Jon is very very much, he's the bastard son of Ed Stark, and nobody lets them two forget it. But it's really funny because you never notice it until somebody else has to point it out to you. And any other ones that were kind of shining for you?
I would definitely say Daenerys Targaryen, because you see her in the first episode, and I felt very almost cold to her character. Like she felt so passive. She was just being tugged along by whatever was happening to her. But you see her arc over the entire first season, and it's amazing that she goes from being so passive to being this warrior queen. And it's an incredible arc, especially as you get to the later episodes and what she has to face and overcome.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think you've actually just read my mind and picked my favorite characters, so that's a little disappointing. But I would have to agree with you. I absolutely loved Arya Stark, and I agree with you about Tyrion Lannister. Daenerys, to me, was that whole plot line with her and Khal Drogo was it's so amazing. And like you said, more for the fact that she really comes into her own. She really understands, and it's her in season 2 and Arya, I completely agree, that are going to be the most interesting evolution to see these two young girls kind of come into their own. The other one I loved was Viserys.
Viserys.
Daenerys's brother. I loved hating him.
He was a very hateable person.
He's played by Henry Lloyd. Harry Lloyd? Harry Lloyd. Do you know who he is?
I don't offhand.
He is the great-great-great-grandson of Charles Dickens.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
I'm serious. And he's been in two Dickens movie remakes or kind of BBC remakes as well, which is kind of eerie but cool. But
is that how he got them? That was on his resume. I'm his great-great-grandson. You must hire me.
Yeah, just so happened to be. Now, as a little bit of a plug for this season 2 DVD Blu-ray box set, I would definitely recommend people. First of all, it's awesome. It's beyond awesome as far as the special features go. But there's a commentary with Peter Dinklage, Harry Lloyd, Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys, and I think one of the executive producers. And Harry just dominates the conversation. He is very personable and really not as evil as
as he's played on the show.
Anybody else that you kind of think, oh, this will be an interesting character development.
I think certainly Prince Joffrey. I can't say any more right now. We're still in the preceding overview section. We haven't gotten to the spoilers yet. So Prince Joffrey, he seems so. I think he's another character you kind of hate, but you're kind of very intrigued to see where he's going to go because of the places he gets put in, of just what happens to him. There are so many interesting characters. It's hard to choose just a few. I'm sure we can spend the rest of the podcast just talking about them. But I would say Prince Joffrey might be the next one, just to see what they're going to do with him and his place now at the end of season 1.
Yeah, I think so. And I think on that lovely note, I suggest we head on over to our spoilers section, because I'm running out of things to say while dodging plot points. How about you, Aaron?
Oh, definitely. I need to bring everything back to the pilot, not the 10th episode finale.
Listeners, please, if you have not seen season 1 and you do not want to have any of the plot points ruined, we are now starting our spoiler section. So, be a dear and turn off the podcast. And as Aaron said, go over and watch the first 10 episodes of Game of Thrones.
Just do it back to back to back to back. You don't need to sleep tonight.
Exactly. And then April 1st, you're all caught up for the first episode of season 2. Now we are in the spoiler zone. What are some of the highlights for you? What were some of the moments that you were really interested by or you really liked in season 1, Aaron?
I mean, certainly the moment, I think, is when Eddard Stark dies. I think we're so used to seeing such a heroic character that's in this tragic circumstance be saved at the last moment. And I remember watching it and being like, okay, his head's kind of on the chopping block now, but don't worry, someone's going to stop him, right? Someone's going to do something. And then, the sword gets raised and you're like, someone's going to do something, right? And then kind of the music swells and all the talking goes away and you're thinking, no, this isn't, no. And then, but no, they do it. They kill off what I think most would think was the hero at that point, and you realize that all bets are off. Nothing is safe, and that's what can make this show so amazing.
Well, I totally agree with you. I could not believe that they got rid of Ned Stark. I really felt like you said, like at the last second, somebody was going to save him, and there was Arya, and I just feel so sad. Like both Arya and Sansa, which is her sister. Those two girls saw this happen to their dad, but none of the boys did. None of the boys were around it, but a lot of the boys had felt very helpless because that had happened, and I don't know. I was so surprised by that. Now, did you get the point? Did you get the clue where you saw he looks over? He sees Arya, doesn't he?
I think I don't know if he sees her, but he definitely looks at where she was, and she's gone now. Someone's kind of taken her and shielded her from having to witness that. But he's definitely looking for his children.
Yeah, I mean, go check out in that first bit. I felt like he looked over to the area where the statue was and he saw her, and then when he put his head up again just before they chopped it, he looked there and she wasn't there. And
You might be right.
I don't know whether that was a tragedy or like I just felt so sad about it, but you don't want her to see it either. So I felt when I mean, we're just going to consider him the most evil man alive. Jaime Lannister decided to push Bran out the window. That to me was like, I was talking at the TV at that point.
That's how it earned the R rating. They're not going to shy away from anything. If he wants to have an incestuous relationship with his sister and try and kill a kid over it, he'll do it. He'll do it. And I think it's kind of summed up in his statement, the things I do for love, that this is his character story, that he loves his sister that much. He doesn't care about the rest. But that's kind of his character motivation.
He's an interesting character because, like, there's a saying that says, there are people who make the bullets and there's the people who shoot them. And I feel like Cersei is really the bullet maker, and he's the one who goes out and does all the grunt work. He's the one who shoots them. And because he killed...
the Mad King, the one Robert was taking the throne from.
Right, so he killed him, and then he's done this to this young boy. Like, I just feel like he... not to be too cruel, but he's a bit of a tool in the family, like if anything needs doing, he's the one who'll go out and he will do kind of the whatever ills they can think up. Now, I don't know if Cersei actually agreed with the kid being pushed out the window, but...
she does seem to have some regrets about it later, but I think it's more a regret of what if he lives and what if he remembers. I think she probably is a more manipulative character than she lets on, certainly in terms of Jaime, and later on we see with, I believe it's her cousin, who helps to kind of depose of Robert Baratheon. We see him in bed with her later too, I believe.
Right. So he's the one. So you do feel like he had a hand in Robert's death?
I think so. Or else this is just getting weird and incestuous. Super, super incestuous.
Can we just speak a little bit about the kind of HBO flavor of the show and whether that's really... is it necessary? Is it valuable? I mean, I watch shows like Dexter and True Blood, and I kind of feel like the violence or the sexuality has relevancy. I don't know how much I felt like that was the case in this show. I felt that there were just shocking moments for shocking moments. Particularly the lesbian love scene or sex scene, while Littlefingers was talking to
Roz, yeah.
More than anything I've ever seen with HBO, I've always felt it was appropriate, but I kind of felt like, oh, this doesn't seem... it seems like throwing something in just for the flavor of it. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think I'm still struggling to understand what Roz's role is in everything. It seems like she's just there to take off her clothes. But what I have noticed, and I think about the end of the first season, there were a couple of articles talking about the idea of sex position, and it's what happens when you mix sex and exposition. And Game of Thrones maybe does this best, in which using kind of sex as a precursor to keep your eyes on the screen while a character is talking about something. They're kind of giving a talk. So when the exact scene you described, Littlefinger telling his prostitutes what to do, he's not only telling them what to do, he's also telling them his personal take on things. He's telling them that it's about the cover, it's about pretending, that they all know who you are, so you have to pretend to be something else because you know who you are deep down inside. And I think Game of Thrones probably does that best. There have been a couple of other moments where they do that. When Viserys is in the bath with one of the slaves he buys for Daenerys, and also I think later on with Tyrion and Shay, his prostitute/lover by the end of the series, that kind of those moments of I'm explaining something to the audience, I'm explaining something about myself, but I'm going to make sure that you're paying attention because there's a half-naked person on screen.
Yeah, I think I wasn't listening to Littlefinger so much because I was really distracted by what was going on the screen. I'm like,
It's true.
really? Do I need to be watching this? Should I turn my head away? How mature am I? How immature am I? Like I've got more of that dialogue going on, than can somebody else hear this or what's, so I don't I don't know.
No one's else in the room, right? I'm just me. Yeah.
Like, and then you feel dirty because it's just you in the room, and I don't know. There's no happy place with that. So, I mean, I've always respected HBO's take on kind of their take on sex and violence and how they put them in their stories. I understand. I have heard that people who have read the books have said that the books have a lot of sex and violence in as well. So it may be just a reflection of the book as well. So, I mean, I just don't have, I don't have enough background knowledge on that side of it. But I just felt that there were a few scenes. Like, I didn't mind the one, like you say, between Tyrion and Shay, but Aaron with her son Robin.
Oh goodness, that even when I watched it the second time, I was like, nope, this feels weird. This is awkward.
And all I can think of is, oh my God, that's a child actor, and I mean, obviously it was a prosthetic or whatever, but I was traumatized. I'm like, I don't know how old that kid is, but
yes, what kind of psychological therapy he's going to need after this?
It's pushing too much, too hard in the wrong ways. But overall, like I say, I think the show's pretty exceptional. One of the highlights for me was really that last scene with Daenerys and the dragons.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't think they'd look as real as they did. They looked amazing. She went into the fire like, I mean, did you pick up earlier that this would be okay, that she wouldn't get burned?
I noticed it once I started watching it the second time. There's a scene where she's holding the dragon eggs, and her slave runs up to her and is like, no, don't touch them. They're on the fire. And the slave's hands are burned, but Daenerys' isn't. I think also when Khal Drogo kills Viserys by dumping the gold, the melted gold on his head, and Daenerys says a real dragon wouldn't be burned by that. You notice them, but to do something as crazy as she did, to walk into the flames of that with the dragon eggs, because you have to realize that in their world, dragons hadn't existed for probably hundreds of years. And it's a huge kind of risk in some sense, but when you're that desperate times call for desperate measures, and as much as you had those hints, this is still so far out of left field to imagine that, yes, there are dragons now.
Yeah, and I just wondered how much of her knowing that was. Like, did she know that the eggs would crack? Was she just throwing herself on her, on her husband's pyre? Like, I just, do you know what I mean? It was like, how much was she in the knowing? How much has she already figured out that she doesn't get burned and she won't get burned? Has she figured that out?
I don't know. I think because she is the last of her kind, right? I mean, it was her and her brother that were the last of her lineage, and now that her brother's dead, it's just her. And who knows? But it was still certainly an epic ending.
This also makes her kind of invincible.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, obviously she's still on the other side of the sea and she has to get back over. But in some sense, even though she has this great power, she's still she doesn't have that many people with her. When she was married to Khal Drogo, she had this amazing fighting force. But now she's just got her dragons, and she feels, apart from Jeor Mormont, the exiled son of the guy at the Night Watch, like she feels a little isolated, I want to say.
I think that they will come to her, though. I mean, I think the fact she's got the dragons, I think automatically will make her more. And then she has that knowing as well of that community where they would go from basically village to village. They'd destroy it and take the people as slaves. So she has that understanding now. I'm interested to see where her character goes for season 2, because you don't, I mean, she seems really kind of to be the most pious character at this point. Like, she really has a right to the throne, and, she's got some, scary backup with these dragons. And, I mean, will all three dragons come to maturity? That's another question. One might die, or, they all might die.
Potentially.
I'm sure somebody won't, will not want them around for very long, so. But yeah, it also, when her brother dies by the melted crown, which, by the way, was horrifying and awesome at the same time.
All the best Death Star.
We should just maybe go from house to house and kind of discuss the plot points from that. But, her brother, it also indicated that he wasn't actually an heir because he could be killed by fire, right?
That's very true.
This is my complete complaint about Game of Thrones, and it's with Khal Drogo. Was that not the lamest way to die ever?
It really was. He got like a small nick in a fight, and he was done.
Yeah.
He defeated every warrior for like the last 35 years, and then his best friend cuts him on the chest, and it's like, game over, guys. I'm just done. I'm just goodbye now.
And I think watching it the second time, I felt like the witch had a lot to do with it. Like she actually,
certainly.
She induced a lot of the infection. She actually made it worse for him.
She might have been the reason why, and even though she protests her innocence until the end, it does seem a little like maybe you actually did kill him more than any cut did.
I'm really sad to see him go. Like, I'm really sad because, one, I loved their love together. I absolutely thought that was fantastic to watch. But I also I love to see this kind of very strong, very masculine. And he just started to get his game on, He was just like, yeah, let's go across the seas. Let's tear this place apart. I would have liked to have seen that energy. I mean, I think she'll be bringing that on too, and definitely it's about her journey. So he has to go because, at some point it is all about her. What do you think is going to happen with Ser Jorah? What do you think is going to happen with him?
Ser Jorah is very interesting to me because obviously he is exiled at the start when we first meet him, and I don't even know what he's doing in Essos, just kind of waiting for something to happen, it seems. I really don't know. But he kind of makes his alliance with Daenerys, and at one point, Varys, the Master of Whisperers, kind of does give him that message of, I'll lift your exile, you can come back, we're okay with you now for all the spying you've done for us. But he changes his mind and he decides, no, I think Daenerys is the future. I'm going to stick with her. I'm going to choose her above everyone back home. And that interests me. I think, like you said, Daenerys has a great claim to the throne. Her father was the king who was unceremoniously deposed after they had ruled for 250 years. And I think maybe he's chosen right. Maybe Daenerys and the dragons are what it's going to take, and he'll be able to get his power back that way. Maybe.
Yeah, I still feel there's also a mystery behind him. Like, we don't know the full story of why he's there or why he didn't take the pardon. Speaking of the kind of rightful heir to the throne, the House of Baratheon now, like you had mentioned, you're interested in seeing where Joffrey goes in season 2. Now we're in the spoilers section. Feel free to speak your mind there, Aaron.
Well, I don't want to ruin anything about season 2 by bringing in the next character, but certainly Prince Joffrey, he does feel very petulant. He feels like a whiny child, like, I'm in charge now, I'll do what I want. I think one of the best posters for season 2 is a picture of Ed Stark's head on a spike saying, the king will do what he likes. And certainly he does. It seems that he wants to make his own mark in the world, that his father is famous for this uprising. He's famous for taking back power. And Joffrey, he has a sheltered life in some sense, but he's trying to make his own mark, and he's kind of a douche. So how he's going to do it is going to be his own way. But certainly with Stannis Baratheon, who is technically next in line to the throne following Robert Baratheon's death, who we're going to see in the second season, I think there's going to be a very interesting power struggle between the two.
Well, now this is the thing that interested me. Stannis, we haven't met him yet. We've heard talk of him. So he is Robert's brother.
Yeah.
And is that why he's considered second in line? I really feel like, because they keep talking like Stannis should have the throne, right?
I think the other reason is because Joffrey is so young. He's probably maybe 14, 15 in the show, while Stannis is a full adult. And moreover, Stannis is, I think, the leader of an army. He has kind of the sensibilities to lead a nation, to lead a kingdom. And I think in that regard, a lot of people do think he should be next in line for the throne, versus this 15-year-old kid who doesn't know what to do with it if he gets it.
I also loved Robert Baratheon, like Mark Addy as as this kind of drunken, whoring, overbearing king who, him and Ned actually had a very sweet relationship. So it was quite sad to see again another lame death. Like, he goes hunting and he comes back. Like, there was nothing very epic about that.
But I guess that's why it's the Game of Thrones. You can die at any time from any way.
Tell you who I'm really interested in the royal court essentially is Littlefinger's and Varys relationship. Varys is the eunuch basically. They have the most interesting. There's that one scene, I don't know what episode it's in, but they have this one scene where they have this banter in the royal hall. And that to me was one of my favorite scenes. I just, there's the power of the wage of battle over power, and it's over these very secondary characters, and they're both ambiguous. You have no idea what either of them ultimately wants.
Yeah, I mean, I think Littlefinger we know at least a little bit because he is in love with Catelyn Stark. He does kind of conspire to get Eddard killed, but Varys is very much in the shadows, and I guess that's why his title is Master of the Whispers. I guess kind of like their version of the CIA, knowing what's going on surreptitiously. But it's true. I guess it almost makes you ask the question of who's really in power. Is it the person? Is it the king? Is it the person who has the throne, or is it that inner circle around him? And what can the four of them do? Say that the one king can't or doesn't.
And I think I'm interested to see the relationship between, and I just kind of got a hint of this. I don't know if this would actually be a plot line for season 2, but the relationship between Sansa and the Hound. Did you kind of get that vibe when Joffrey was showing her her basically her dad spike, head on a spike? I felt like there was a protectiveness about the Hound that could maybe play out in her escape or something along those lines.
I think Sansa is still such an interesting character. Well, I mean, as venial, as vain as she is, it seems like her one and only motivation is to marry Prince Joffrey, King Joffrey now. But it does almost seem like, is there something more to you? Because this man, as much as you want to love him, as much as you want to be queen, he also killed your father. And I'm interested to see what they'll do with her.
I think she's lost a lot of the love now for him because of what he did with her father. And I think now is, I mean, like, we've seen her be, like you say, a very vain, very vacuous young girl, and now, like you say, now she has the ability in season 2 to have this incredible arc to go from being essentially, that type of person to either coming into her own, a lot like Arya did. Like you said, maybe Arya's before her time, and Sansa needs to come up to that plate, or she could really be used and abused and tossed around like she has been. Like, I mean, really, Cersei played her a lot. Now, we haven't talked much about the Wall. What are your thoughts on that plot line for season 2, or what do you think about those characters in general?
I think probably for me the Wall was best exemplified at the end of season 1 when Jon Snow he's riding away. He's giving up. He says, I need to go back to my family. But he knows that if he does this, he's getting charged with death. But he still chooses his family. But his friends there, they refuse to let him. they go out and they bring him back. They drag him back and they say, "You are of the Night's Watch. You need to be here. You're one of us now. You're not. We're your family now, not them anymore." And I think, especially when you see kind of his heartbreak at what the Night's Watch has become. He was raised with this idea of the Night's Watch are all these amazing heroes, that they're the last line of defense, protecting us from what's beyond, what's above us. And he comes there and he realizes that no one cares about it anymore. Their only recruits are criminals who would rather serve here than have their arm cut off. And I think you also see as he moves along, he is so much better than the rest of them. He has amazing fighting skills. He has amazing leadership abilities. And he gets so upset when he doesn't get the role he wanted. He doesn't get to be one of the rangers, and instead he has to be the servant to the guy in charge. But once he learns that he's being groomed to be the leader, the next leader, he seems to accept the role more readily. And I know at the end of the season we have them riding off up above through the wall to see what's beyond there, what's causing some of the strange and mysterious happenings going on, and to find Benjen Stark, Jon Snow's uncle, and I guess maybe his hero or his mentor in this place. And I'm certainly interested to see what will happen. We're going to get a new character, which is Ygritte, who's going to be Jon Snow's love interest this season, which I'm very intrigued about who she is. Yeah.
Do you think she's like a wildling?
I believe she's a wildling. She might be.
Because I was going to say, like, what other women would he interact with, right?
Yeah, it's true. But now you have to remember, he took his vows. He can't get married. He can't have any children. So this is going to be interesting. I think this will be a test of his vows. I think for all of the characters on the Night's Watch, they have this kind of test, and we hopefully will get to see Jon Snow's in the second season.
And I have to say, I loved Samwell.
Oh, Samuel. Yes.
he was such a lovely puddle, you know. I don't know how else to explain him. Like, he was just this puddle of a person, you know.
Yeah.
I found him endearing. Here's where I find the Wall so interesting, because no matter how much bickering is going on with the Starks and Lannisters and Baratheons and Targaryens, you have, at the end of the day, this larger than life, and this is where the fantasy element is so exciting. You have this larger than life horde or thing that's coming towards you. It's like the Thing, you know. It's like it's coming towards you, and you don't know what it is, and it's very vague and it's very ominous. And I just think all of those houses, like they had to do thousands of years ago when they pushed back the White Walkers. I think all of those houses inevitably are going to have to come together in order for survival anyway. This is my theory.
I definitely think so. I mean, the Stark motto is that winter is coming, and you get hints dropped throughout that this might be one of the worst winters ever, that whatever's above the wall is just coming to attack. And I think Tyrion makes a very interesting point at I think in the middle of the season, where he says, like, the wildlings just had the misfortune of being above the wall when we built it. And as much as we call ourselves civilized, as much as they call themselves civilized, it's just a matter of luck almost of where that wall went up. And I think it's interesting to ask the question of, what are the wildlings? Must they be bad people? Could they be good people, but just because there's a huge wall, because we build up so much animosity and say they're bad people, they become bad people?
That's an interesting thought. By the way, what a fantastic introduction to the series was that first scene, you know, where you see the White Walkers, and we haven't seen anything of them since. And that's, I think, maybe one of the reasons I feel like this is all leading towards, you know, their descent on you know, past the wall, essentially. So do you think Jon Snow's story is with the Wall, or do you think his story is with his family?
I think his story is with the Wall. I think especially as he stays with the Night's Watch and as he's increasingly distanced from his family, they're going to become his new family now. And I think maybe because back in Winterfell he was always known as the bastard, he was always known as Eddard Stark's love child, he's going to find his own place. He's going to be able to fit in more with the Night's Watch than he ever could back in Winterfell.
I feel like he's also, though, a hero in the making. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even though, and that's why maybe he's being constantly called the bastard son of Ed Stark, is that I will get, sorry Sean Bean, I will get Ed Stark at some point properly right. But I just feel like he, because he's this bastard son, eventually one day he will be the head of the family. He will be the the one with the wisdom and the one that he will become his father essentially.
Well, I would say he's certainly the most noble of the characters left. I think in that regard, he is the most like Eddard Stark.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see Rob having that ability to, I see him coming up to the plate, but I don't know. There just hasn't been enough character development from him to see him as kind of, being a lot like his dad, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
House of Lannister. Let's round up with where do we think these folks are headed in season 2, and then maybe talk a little bit about the new characters.
Mm-hmm. House of Lannister. I think Jaime being held hostage by the House of Stark is going to be interesting. How that plays out if they barter with. I know the plan is to barter with King Joffrey for Sansa and Arya back. So to see, but I don't know how quickly that'll happen. I think Jaime might have a few manipulations. He might stir the pot a little bit while he stays with the Starks. I think that'll be interesting to see. Cersei as well, being almost Joffrey's right-hand man in a way, kind of teaching him how his father ran things while still retaining her own manipulations in terms of what she's doing. That'll be interesting. And also Tyrion. I think Tyrion at the end, we see that he's being sent to be the new hand of the king for King Joffrey. And he's bringing along Shay, and this is his attempt to really spice things up and stir the pot. Wherever Tyrion goes, he's always fun, and he's always bringing his own sense to things. And I think that as he's in some sense, the active ruler whenever Joffrey's not around, when you're the hand of the king, seeing him in a leadership position like that's going to be very interesting for the entire Lannister family. And also you even have their dad, Tywin Lannister, who he's becoming more of a presence, and I've heard, pray tell, that apparently later on in the book series, he becomes even more of a heroic figure than Eddard Stark is for us in season 1. So I'll be very interested to see how that plays out.
Well, this is the thing I never understood about the Lannisters, is that essentially when they were getting rid of Aerys Targaryen, that the Lannisters essentially, because they were friends, Tywin was friends with Aerys. This is a whole new language for me, folks. Please be patient. Aerys and Tywin had essentially an alliance that Aerys had requested Tywin bring his forces to help protect, and he didn't realize that Tywin had a relationship with Baratheon. So he basically went in, softened up King's Landing, killed off all of the Targaryen, soldiers, and then gave the throne to Robert. And the thing I find so interesting about that is, why would he give the throne to Robert? You know what I mean? It's like, Jaime did the killing of the king, the Mad King. I mean, I think that was such a plummy spot. Why did Tywin turn around and say, okay, I think the best we can do here is maybe get Cersei to marry the future king? I felt like I felt like that was for the taking. He has the most money in the country. He's the richest one. So I'm like, why would you sit back on that? So I'm thinking very much, I agree with you. Like, I hadn't heard that he plays a bigger role, but it makes a lot of sense to me that he would kind of come into this. And maybe his relationship with Tyrion, because you see a small evolution there of, him respecting his son's opinions and judgment. So that might become a bigger play, like you say, in the future. I'm kind of interested, like you said, to see where Jaime is headed, as well. I would like him to learn some things.
He does feel maybe that he had the least arc of maybe any of the characters on the show. He's probably the same as he was when he started in the pilot.
I would say so. And just, simply as a villain, it just, I like the fact that he's been caught and he's roughing it a bit, and he has to kind of, maybe, work towards some level of evolution. Or like you said, if he's not working towards some level of evolution, he's building those wedges between people in different areas, essentially, as opposed to just the castle. So yeah. Now, what are some of the new characters coming in? I think you have a better grasp on this than I do, so I'll let you run with that.
I have a little bit of a grasp. I've been trying to pay attention to it all. I think Stannis Baratheon might be the biggest, newest character that we're going to get. He's one of the claimants to the Iron Throne. He's Robert's younger brother, but he's still older than Renly. And like I was saying, he is the character that has the most military experience. He's in charge, and he seems like a very powerful figure that probably is not going to go lightly to the idea that his brother has died and his brother's wimpy son has taken the throne. He, I feel, is going to be very, very strong and forceful in making sure that his rights are asserted, that if he should be in charge, that he will be in charge. And I know he's bringing with him a new sort of priestess, shall we say. It's the Red Priestess, Melisandre. I assume I'm saying the name wrong, and will continue to assume that until I am proven right. But certainly what she is going to be able to bring as this priestess to a foreign god, and because she is one of his advisors, and I think that's going to add a whole new level in terms of certainly even the magic kind of element that we see every now and then.
I hear she plays a very prominent role too. Like fans are quite eager that she comes on the scene.
All of these new characters are very exciting. There's a new smuggler coming on, Sir Davos Seaworth, and he also works for Stannis, so that'll be interesting to see what he brings. But then there are a few others that aren't related to Stannis. There's Renly's supposed to be getting a wife, so that's interesting given Renly's current orientations right now. Like I was saying, certainly Ygritte, Jon Snow's love interest, which I'm very interested to see how they deal with this, because Jon Snow, he's such a likable guy. You want him to get a girl.
Just thought it was such a funny sentence that he went to the wall and it's like, you can't live, you can't do anything, and da-da-da. And I don't know, it was an interesting forced restriction that, are we waiting for him to break out of that? Will he inevitably break out of that? I don't know, that's interesting.
It's a good question, whether he'll be faithful to his vows more than his father was to his wife's vows.
Here's what I find particularly interesting about the Game of Thrones. Nobody knows how it ends, right?
I don't even think George R.R. Martin knows how it ends. It's, 5 or 6 books in, and he's not done writing.
Yeah, like, I think he has another couple of books to write or something like that. So, literally, nobody has any clue where this all culminates to. And I have to say, we can, like you say, we have the hints of it. We can see that there's kind of, themes or like the winter is coming. You get the ominous feeling. You kind of know that has a connection to the White Walkers. So I'm really interested. I mean, at this point, I don't know whether to read the first books or, because that would drive me nuts. I hate waiting for books. I'd prefer, to read them all at once. Do you know how far in the books they are? Is season 1 like a full book? Or?
I believe season 1 is just the first book, and season 2 should be the second book. And I think after that, they might start changing things around, because my understanding is that books 4 and 5 take place at the same time.
Oh.
That's what I'm hearing.
I'm so looking forward to doing this again for season 2. How about you?
Oh, I'm definitely excited. Every episode, there's going to be tons of things to talk about.
So I'm just going to wrap up here. This is Kindah Mardam Bey and Aaron Bala, and we are on the PRESS+1 podcast. You can check out all of our coverage at www.press+1.com, and we want to hear what you think. So please drop a line and let us know what you thought of the podcast, what you think of the characters in the show, season 1, what you're looking forward to in season 2. We want to really hear what you have to say about it. Did you like Game of Thrones? I can't imagine anybody not. But if you did, please drop a line and leave a strong argument why you didn't like the Game of Thrones for season 1. Again, season 2 airs April 1st, which is Sunday, which is coming up very quickly. And thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy season 2.